Well, we've got Jarrod Kerr once more from Kiwi Bank, Chief Economist of Kiwi Bank. But beyond that, before that, someone who really knows his game, someone who's really passionate about the economy and what's best for New Zealand and our people, our community. And that is the biggest differentiation of this man who's sitting next to me. And I always feel privileged and honored to talk to him, get his insights, speak to him, and get all that information out for you guys who are sitting at home watching this on any kind of screen, but some information for you as well as to where have we come from, where are we now, and where do we go from here on. And that's been the mantra for me as well. And I'll also say today that it's always to each to its own. Whatever we might speak and how you interpret is your interpretation. And it also gives me a disclaimer that whatever we say here, it's not considered as advice or any kind of financial advice for that matter. It's a discussion and our point of view as to where we see the market has been and will be, but it's nothing to do with how you should act. As I said, to each to its own, your perception. But in case of any advice, it'll be tailor-made to you, and that's a job which can be done individually at Fundmaster when it's a relationship in terms of client and advisor. But today, it's solely about Jarrod Kerr or his predictions and what he thinks. And it's also one more thing. Before I welcome Jarrod, his latest newsletter, which he did before the OCR announcement, is one of the best I've ever read from a chief economist. Something which really added a lot more value and more human factor in terms of not only rates, but a lot of other factors in terms of a market. So first of all, thank you, Jarrod. It was a long-winded introduction, but I could speak on and on about how I am impressed and how passionate you are and how you write your stuff. So first of all, congratulations. And congratulations to your bank as well. They've got such great talent, and I'll just jump in. I think people have heard me a lot. How are you feeling about this whole market as of today?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for such a kind introduction. That's lovely to hear, and it's always a pleasure talking to you, and I think we get some good points across. How am I feeling at the moment? Well, I'm feeling a lot better today than I was, a few weeks ago. And the reason I'm feeling better is because all of my discussions with, our clients up until 3 or 4 weeks ago have been, next year is going to be a better year, but I'm facing all these problems. And then the business or the person would turn around and say, these are all the problems that I've got. Now, after the Reserve Bank has cut the cash rate, people have lifted their heads. They're like, okay, rates are being cut. It's not a theoretical discussion anymore. I am actually looking, forward to next year. I am actually sort of lifting my head and thinking about growth, which, up until 3 weeks ago was, an alien concept.
It is, and I have felt the same. And that's what our discussion was as well when we met in July. And that's what my feeling personally has been as well, that it's a small cut, but it's a big value cut. I believe it's a cut which has added a lot more positivity to our environment in New Zealand. It's basically given a boost to people, as you said, to lift their head up and start looking to do better. Because even though we say there's no doom and gloom, there's light at the end of the tunnel, all these good, positive, motivating factors are there. But when doom and gloom hits individually, people go through a dungeon of a time. They all feel low and all. And I said this OCR, commendably has actually changed the environment. At least, to segue to my question, OCR, you said something's going to happen. And there's a hint that it'll happen sooner, but definitely in October, November. Well, it's happened in August, right? What is our prediction from here on? Are we seeing a 0.25 basis cut only, or 0.50 basis in the next two announcements before Christmas? Will New Zealand whānau and community will have a great Christmas? Will they just leave their headaches away? Will our businesses boom? Will we see a lot of activity in tourism and other stuff as well? Is the government on the right track? I mean, I am thinking like a common man, and I have a lot of questions. So let me know from all facts of life, like a pie diagram. Give me a pie. Can I eat everything in the pie this year, or I'll have to have some now and some next year?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, right? I think everyone's thinking the same thing. I would start internationally and say that all major central banks, excluding the Bank of Japan, are cutting. They've all seen the slowdown. They're all happy inflation's going back to 2%. And that's important for New Zealand because they're our trading partners. And if they're going to be doing better next year, which they will be with all these rate cuts offshore, then we'll see more export growth. That's great, tick. Domestically, interest rates have been cut. That takes time to feed through, but they have been cut. And as your customers have told you, people are a bit more upbeat now. They are looking to next year. They are, I think, grateful knowing that interest rates not only are not going up anymore, but they're going down. And when they roll off, things are going to get easier, and that's businesses and households. So I think we're going to go into next year still soft, but we're going to see household consumption pick up. We're going to see business investment pick up. We're going to see the economy turning a corner, and that turning point starts now. But this time next year, I think our conversation is going to be a lot more upbeat. Housing market would have stabilised and started to see price rises. The economy will be growing at 1 to 2%. Not great, but a damn sight better than what we've had this year and last. And I think we'll be looking with greater positivity to the future.
And positivity to the future is amazing. Is October going to be another cut?
Yes.
November?
Yes.
So 0.25, 0.25.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a risk they do 50 in November. We might see central banks accelerating their cuts a little bit because we have recorded such a recession here. It's been 2 years of recession, right? That's a long time, really long time. And we're starting to see a bit of a snowball in the lift in unemployment, which is not good. So I could argue quite strongly that the Reserve Bank should be going in 50s, but I think their decision to cut was not a decision to do 25. It was a decision to take us back to more normal levels or neutral levels, and they think neutral is about 275. So we were at 5.5. We're talking about a 200 to 300 basis point cut. That's mortgage rates, business lending rates coming off 2 percentage points.
By next year?
At least, yeah.
Do you think we'll ever see a 3.99 for 5 years?
Probably not in this.
Or next year?
But maybe a 4 point something.
Before Christmas or next year? Next year.
Next year, yeah.
Okay.
It'll take a little while for them to put all the cuts through. But this time next year we would have seen
a lot more stability, positivity, and the green pastures are going to be not a dream but a reality.
No. I think we're planting the seeds today.
Yeah.
We will see those green shoots by the end of the year, and we'll have plants this time next year, and then 26 and beyond we'll be looking at a few trees.
That's brilliant. That's an amazing thing for everybody who's going to listen to this, when we air it. But if there's a 0.25 or a 0.50 by November or a bit more, that's all good news. But the most important thing for everybody is that this is your time to really focus on what you can do best for yourself and how you can look after yourself so that you can do better around in your community as well. Because it starts within you, doesn't it? So that moves me to my next question. We have been in a recession, as you said, for 2 years. Are we back somewhere to my most favorable time in terms of inflation. Where we are, because this inflation word has become, it's not a long spelling, but it's become a long word for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Where are we in inflation as of today?
Well, the official stats, the official basket that we look at is in the 3s, and by the end of the next reading, we're going to be in the 2s, and by the middle of next year, we'll be at 2%, and that's bang on the Reserve Bank's target. So job done for them, and they've recognised that. They've seen that that's coming through. So that is fantastic. But when you say 2% to people, they turn around and say that's not right. My rates have just gone up 15%. My insurance premiums have just gone up 25%. My this, my that. Yeah, though there are still some pretty hefty price increases coming through. But broadly speaking, we're starting to see falls in imported inflation, and other inflation around the economy has cooled right down. So yeah, there's some hot spots that really hurt, but there's relief elsewhere.
Relief in interest rates, and obviously the prices in Woolworths, older days countdown and Pack and Save have also come down. Now, if I come back to mere basics, the broccoli is come down.
Yeah.
The cauliflower is down. It's
Yeah.
not a $5 for one flower of a cauliflower. It's come down. Cabbage has come down. Beetroot has come down. So there's a lot more basics which I personally feel, which we see. Obviously, if you're eating a Vogel bread, then it's still in the same price.
Yeah.
Right? But in terms of insurance, you're right. The premiums will jump. And I also think these are all professional services. And sometimes they're also, before the service, they're a business. And businesses sometimes take advantage of the market as well. And they probably will also shed some, and everybody's shedding. It's like a wave. In a maximum, when you go to a cricket stadium or a rugby stadium, with a Mexican wave, everybody starts up and down. And this interest rate thing, when it goes down, things will start getting better everywhere as well. So have a very positive note to it. Now, let's go a bit back. Our journey of interest rates, because that's our topical topic, interest rates. People want to know that, hey, last year, this time, we were basically going up, right? We were in the late 6s or early 7s for 1 year, right? And now for 1 year, as per Kiwi Bank's rate is 6.29. Some banks are going as low as 6.19 as well. We've come down,
Yeah.
and this next year, it might be way better, because if we are talking about 2.75 is a sweet spot, or 3, in terms of OCR, we might see, even if the margins are added, 4.99 or something there. But my question is that, what's this journey been? Has this journey of interest rate been right for New Zealand?
I think it's been too aggressive both ways. So when we had the pandemic, they cut, and they cut aggressively, and I agree with that. It was needed, but then they did quantitative easing. They had us getting ready for a negative cash rate.
Yeah.
We were fiercely opposed to that. So they went too far.
Too far.
And we ended up with the spike in demand when supply was constrained, as you remember, and inflation just shot through, and we saw a peak of 7.3 in our official inflation rate.
Yes.
So then the central bank started hiking, and they hiked aggressively, really aggressively, from just 0.25 all the way up to 5.5, and that came through really quickly.
Really quickly, yes.
So people who were fixing rates in the 2s and 3s all of a sudden jumped into the 6s and 7s, like you said. That was a doubling or near tripling for some people, and now we're coming back down. We're not going to go anywhere near as low as what we did during COVID, but we're going to come back to more normal 5-point-something rates, and I think that'll provide a lot of relief for households.
Exactly, and you're right. We were aggressive in COVID to go down. We were aggressive after COVID to come up.
Yep.
Yes, there were two aggressive approaches, but that's something which we cannot control. I'll take it on a philosophical side. Either it's recession or it's criticism. And I'm also reading this book where, some of the bigger companies, when you talk about investment advice, it's not advice again, but some of the bigger investment firms, when you invest in shares and you spread your portfolio, you always want to get the top return. If you look at Netflix, they gave 35,000 times return, but out of that 94% of their time they were below, right? It's only their window was 6%, right? That's where. But it also teaches people patience, and trusting in something. You might see a good day or a bad day. What Reserve Bank did was for the best of our country. It was also to teach everybody a lesson that even though interest rates go down, right, you learn. And you don't just go all gangbusters about buying stuff and doing stuff. You save money. You pay more mortgage. You create more equity so that you're ready for the time when the market goes, low. You can buy then with that equity. You focus on your incomes. You change your strategy. And similar to criticism as well. Sometimes we get criticized for doing some things. I'll say criticism of any sort. There's no word as constructive or destructive criticism. Criticism of any sort is basically telling you to come back to normalcy. And similarly, what happened and what we went through was to creating, it was an effect to create balance once again. And all we're getting into is a balanced state. And we'll be disbalanced again. It's not that we will not see, those things again, because that's what the market does. But in reality, it's all about just holding your fort and planning your financial plan as to where you see. And that leads me to my next question. Interest rates. We always talked about hedging or fixing interest rates or stuff. Not as a chief economist, not as somebody who comes from a bank, just as a mere homeowner, right? What would be your strategy for your loans, and I'll share mine as well, in terms of interest rates? Should people jump in breaking their loans and go to something differently if they fix for 2 years or 18 months or 6 months? They've not hedged anything. Or they should hold on and relax and take it easy and go through the cycle. What would you do as a layman, a normal homeowner?
Well, look, I'll tell you, I came back to New Zealand in 2018. And I always like fixing and breaking things up. So I did some 1 year, 2 year, I think I did a bit of 5 year. Some of that worked, some of it didn't, right? And that to me is that's just how I like to do things. Then I actually broke a lot of loans in 2021 because they got so low. I fixed for 3 years and I fixed for 5 years. So my 3 year loans rolled off basically a few months ago in May, and I fixed for 6 months and 1 year, and I've still got that 5 year which comes off in 2026. So I like having something rolling off every year, because if I do have a bit of extra cash I can pay a bit more down, but I'm an interest rate guy, I love it, so I do like something rolling off every year. And that's the way I play it, and I have tried to fix for longer periods when interest rates are low and shorter periods when, now when I think interest rates are high and falling.
So when interest rates are falling, general strategy is to understand the market. See, and I'll tell you, being in this industry and following a lot of interest rates because I love interest rates as well. And what that teaches me is that it's come down to your personal risk appetite. And we'll ask Jarrod about hedging and a bit more explanation. But from my point of view, your personal appetite is somebody who says, hey, I don't want to know about it for 2 years. I'm happy to take it for 2 years. I don't want to know anything about it. Just give me some peace of mind. Then you're a bit risk averse and you would probably take that approach of a long term, anytime. Some people say, hey, I actually would like to take the risk. I can see a lot of articles. I see inflation. These days, everything is available on social media, on internet. There's a lot of reading. And it's a no-brainer for anybody to know that the interest rates or OCR is going to fall, the interest rate is going to fall. So a 6 month to a 12 month strategy might be for you as well, which is an informed decision. It's a risk though still, because we never know what's going to happen in the global market. But it's an informed decision where you take probability. And probabilities can become possibilities. And that's what you need to see. So there are two approaches, risk, non-risk, or a middle approach, which is hedging. What is hedging?
Well, hedging's trying to take risk out of it. So, for for a homeowner or someone who owns an investment property, for example, you know what your rent is, and fixing in your interest rates can save you if interest rates spike down the track, right? And you've kind of locked in those two things. You know what your rent is, you know what your interest rates are, that's fine. You take away the interest rate risk by fixing it. And, by definition of fixing, doesn't move. It stays at that rate for 2 years or 5 years. So it's trying to remove that risk, particularly if interest rates spike. People do it in currencies as well. It's the same thing. If you're an importer, you want to fix, the exchange rate, because the exchange rate is so volatile. You need certainty in your life. You need certainty in your business, and trying to sort of fix those elements can really help you with your performance and planning.
Agreed. It's about, in older days, when I remember my science days, and I bring it back to my childhood days, and probably everybody would have experienced in their school, constant. You keep some things constant to do some other things.
Yeah.
Even if you were doing a science experiment, there was something kept like a constant, or something you would relate to. So I believe that's the scenario. Well, moving on, we'll discuss about, regions, how are the regions doing in property market and stuff, but also about Auckland property market. Auckland property market, the average price falls below $1 million, first time in 4 years, right? What will be the impact of interest rates in Auckland, in the property prices? Will we go over 1 million? And what about the regions? Like, I see a lot more people investing in Rotorua, Gisborne, Queenstown, Christchurch, other smaller towns. Palmerston North, once called a ghost town, is actually getting, some 5-star hotels coming in. There are things moving. What is your take on that?
Yeah, so our take is, first of all, interest rate cuts are going to have a very positive impact on the whole market, right? The Auckland market is interesting. It has underperformed the regions, and that's even with a massive migration boom, migrants coming in. So I do think Auckland leads most of the time. Whatever's happening in Auckland, you'll start seeing that filtering elsewhere, and I think we will see not only things stabilise, but Auckland house prices picking up into next year as these rate cuts come through. That'll feed into the regions. We're very different across the regions. Most of the North Island is, scoring about a 3 out of 10, which is not great.
Yeah.
There's a 4 in Hawke's Bay. Wellington, 2 out of 10, and that hasn't changed in the last year. So they're quite depressed down there. The property market has underperformed all others. It's fallen 25%. Auckland's fallen 23%. Whole country's fallen like 17, 18. So it gives you an idea. The underperformance in Wellington will continue, given the government is cutting, jobs there, and there's quite an economic, upheaval happening. But in the South Island, things have picked up, faster than we expected, particularly the further you go south. So, Queenstown's kind of bouncing back a bit, which is great. Southland is really strong at the moment. They're having a bit of a building boom down there, and I think it goes to your point where, Aucklanders are leaving. Aucklanders are heading into the regions looking for better value. People can work from home. They can work remotely. They can do, our jobs 3-4 days a week, potentially somewhere else. So, why wouldn't you sell a $1.5 million Auckland home, buy yourself $700,000-800,000 home elsewhere? We are seeing that trend continue, and it's also part of the ageing population story.
Yeah, it is, and quite true. I believe the numbers you've given would actually tell people a lot of the story. And with interest rates, we will see a lot of jump. Do you think if you're down by 25% in Auckland market and region 17-18%, by next year this time, where will we be? Will we back to like ground or what?
Yeah, so the housing market today is a little softer than we thought it would be.
It is.
Right, so we probably thought that things would have turned around a bit faster. But no, rate cuts have hit now. It's going to take a bit of time. I think this spring and summer are going to be an important gauge. That's where you'll see your green shoots. But then this time next year, we're saying house prices will be running at about 5 to 7%, which, that's a good recovery, having fallen 20%.
Yeah, that's a great recovery because, see, the council rates were up even though the market is down. But I've seen in the last 2 weeks, after the announcement, I've seen some properties jump up. The market confidence, even though it feeds later into the data, but what I see from auctions and what's happening, I mean, properties have jumped up again in a suburb like Takanini. I've seen properties which are not selling for 850 now selling for 950 to 975.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant. But I would also like to tell all the first home buyers, please do not get into fear of missing out again.
Yeah.
Don't get into a FOMO. Understand what your approval is, understand the need, and it's a property which you will buy, you probably sell, or you probably go, but take risks according to your own investment and your own strategy, not in pressure, right? Yeah. And that's which is the most important. Now you mentioned about, and it's probably my last question, I mean, I'll ask you a lot, but the net migration, we spoke about in your latest podcast as well. I heard about when migrants came in, there's a lot of confusion in the market. The rent demand was high, now it's low. Can you explain a little bit more on this phenomena of a lot of people have left for Australia, across the ditch, and I remember 2008 recession and 2010, 2011 or 12, a lot of people came from the UK and Australia back. Are we going to back, from the migrant coming in to all of that? What is this all about? Where are we now?
Yeah, it's a really good point because migration has a massive impact on our small economy.
Yeah.
And from 2013 to 19, we saw the largest migration boom in New Zealand's history, right? And it was massive, absolutely massive. And we didn't keep up with infrastructure spending, and we didn't build enough houses for these people. Yeah. We then had COVID, which actually gave us a bit of breathing room. We were actually producing, building a number of homes, as the borders were closed. That kind of helped a lot.
Yeah. But
then in the last year, we've seen a record intake in just 1 year, about 140,000 coming in. That's massive. It's something we need to build for, something we are not building for currently. There is a shortage out there. So that problem is getting worse. It means that we need to stimulate investors back into the market. We need to build more homes. That's what it's all about. We don't need to focus so much on demand. We need to focus on supply.
And in terms of the rental demand going low, even though we are in a shortage, we had more migration. What was the net migration? Did 140 coming in, what was the amount of people we lost?
Yeah, so excellent point. So it was actually over 200,000 coming in, and then we lost, I think the latest read is near 80,000 Kiwis. So we've had a record number of migrants coming in and a record number of Kiwis leaving, mostly to Australia. So that dynamic is playing through. And migrants are generally young. They're generally aged 20 to 30, maybe to 40. So they come in here and they're not buying a home, most of them, right? They're renting. So they have put pressure on the rental stock, and we've seen rents rise at the fastest pace in 30 years. So that to us shows that there's a shortage in the market. We've added a lot of people into the market and rents have picked up. To me, as an investor, I start looking at rental yields again. Rents are rising, house prices are falling. It's an attractive market, right? You mentioned before about, thinking long term and thinking through the cycles. That's excellent advice, right? Or excellent insights. And people with that mindset, I think, will be looking at rental yields now going, Okay, they're lifting, they're attractive again. Investors who haven't been in the market for the last few years because they've been hammered by, you know, policy decisions around bright line tests and interest deductibility and you name it, they're going to come back into the market. They're going to be the key driver, in my opinion, over the next year.
And that's very, very important, because I've also seen that a lot of migrants which have moved in, a lot of those jobs which were not being done are being done now. You know, we see, you know, a lot of things happening in that sector. You know, before I close, and I said that I can keep on the whole day talking to you because it's so interesting. But I have a, you know, overall, you know, where is New Zealand in 2024 before Christmas? And where do we see New Zealand in 2025, this time next year? Overall in everything, economy, housing, interest. We've discussed interest rates that they will normalize. We've discussed housing, 5 to 7%, they'll come back. Overall, are we looking in good shape?
So I think 2024, we can say that was the end of the recession.
Yeah.
We've still got a couple of quarters that we're going to record contractions, which is not nice. So it's still going to feel pretty rough.
Yeah.
But I think we can put the stake in the ground and say, recession finished. 2025 is going to be the year of some growth, some bounce back, some policy fueled growth, and optimism. So I think this survive till 25 mentality that we keep hearing, I don't actually like the term because it sounds so, you know, tunnel
yes.
focused.
Yes.
Will change.
We will change.
Yeah.
And it's not survive till 25, we'll change it to thrive till 25.
There you go.
Right? Let's thrive till 25, not survive. And it's brilliant news, you know, makes me feel very positive for myself, for my customers, for our, you know, communities in New Zealand, that we're going towards a positive, you know, environment, the spring, then summer, and hopefully you can all take a good break in your summer and get ready to thrive in 25 and make the most of your own growth and your communities together. Remember one more thing, it's important to have your own growth, but not by, you know, putting anyone else down. It's to grow everybody together and actually grow out of this. You know, as he said, the brilliant news is recession is over. We are back on track. Let's start this journey and thrive till 25. Thank you so much, Jarrod. It was great having you on. And once again, God bless you.
Thanks for having me.